Okay, so hello everyone, greetings and welcome to the 13th session of the online Optom learning series. Let me straight get back to you all and introduce you to our speaker for today. Today we have Ms. Ranukka Singham. She's an optometrist by profession. Currently she is into a different field. She's a certified image and branding consultant, and she has a vast experience in terms of multinational companies. She has worked with Hoya and Alcon in the past, and today she is going to share with us her ideas and her tips on how to make ourselves look better as a customer brand. So thumbs up, go ahead. We are waiting for your tips and tricks.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Fakrudin, for inviting me for this, and I really hope that everyone here is doing well in spite of this recent pandemic. Let me just try to okay. So as what Fakrudin has been sharing with everyone here, today I will be taking this 30 minutes to share with you from an image consultant's perspective of how you can improve the customer experience journey in your optical practice. Now, as you know, I spent a big chunk of my career in the optical field, and now I've actually pivoted my career, into image and branding, and I'm really excited to share with you guys some findings that you might find interesting to implement in your practice as well. All right. So in terms of what I've been doing right now, a lot of my image and branding work has been primarily focused on the healthcare industry. So I work with a lot of hospitals, pharma industries, like pharma companies, clinics, pharmacies, to help all these companies match their substance towards with their perception. I also work with many individuals on that, just to give you guys a bit of background of what I do. Now, without further ado, let me just go straight into the agenda by itself. So today I will be talking through with you guys on three things. First is the professional branding. What exactly is it and why is it so important, especially in a sense where we are very client facing in the optical side. And second thing is, of course, I'll be sharing with you guys some survey insights where I'll bring you through a peek of the consumer's mind in a retail environment. Maybe some things you already know, or some things might be a surprise to you. So really excited to show you what I found out. And the last thing is, after listening to all of what I can say, I'll also be sharing with you maybe some quick tips that you can implement immediately into your practice right now. So just a disclaimer note, the survey that I'll be sharing with you guys is actually a nationwide survey that I did in Malaysia to actually evaluate consumer experience in the retail environment, particularly in the optical practice. Now, this is a survey that I did last year, and I'm not allowed to disclose the company, or rather the retail outlet that I have been doing this thus far, but I'm allowed to share with you the results by itself. So this is a survey done in a Malaysian retail environment. Might not be applicable to your country, but I'm sure there are many things that I'll be sharing that you might find useful as well. So first things first is that whenever I do any kind of trainings or any kind of talks, I always find it very important to set the stage right. Meaning to say, I need everybody to also understand the big why. For some of you who are familiar with Simon Sinek's work, you know that he's very famous for this particular theory, which is the golden circle, starting everything with a why. Why is it so important for us in the optical industry, particularly for you guys who are in retail practice, to emphasize and start paying attention to professional branding for that matter? Now, on that note, I have some things to share with you. So why is it so important? I split it into two things that are, in my opinion, based on the survey, this is what I see. First thing is the competition. And second is consumers' perception. Now, in terms of competition, I don't know about your countries, but in Malaysia, even in a mall itself, especially big established malls, you do see, in fact, up to 15 optical practices in one mall or one particular small area. And thinking about it, all the optical outlets or the practices carry almost the same brands. The level of service, meaning to say what you offer in terms of refraction, lens adjustments, contact lenses are all very similar. So in that note, what really differentiates you with the outlet next door? It really is the level of professionalism that you bring to the table. Because if you don't do that, consumers are not able to understand the difference between you and your next door. And hence, the next thing that they will actually be comparing on is pricing. And we don't want that. And on consumer perception, here's where I would like to share with you some interesting insights that I found in the survey. So this survey that I did with 112 consumers was a very lengthy one. It was split into outlet visits as well as phone call surveys. And one of the questions that I did ask is this: when you walk into a practice, do you know who is the eye care practitioner? And on this note, almost 70% of the consumers do not know who is actually the eye care practitioner when they walk into the practice. And that also means that in terms of professional branding, the image that you're portraying is not clear enough for someone to instantaneously identify you with what you do. And that's something that's quite alarming. Then the next thing I also did ask is that when would the eye care practitioner's image affect his level of trustworthiness? And why did I ask this question is because I realized when I start speaking about professional branding to eye care practitioners, I get welcomed by certain feedbacks. Some of them would tell me things like, well, I know it's important, but most importantly is my substance, right? As long as I can get the job done, as long as I can do a really great refraction, I think my customers will come back to me as well. But little did they know that image, right, how people perceive you can also affect the level of trustworthiness people have towards you as well as your practice. So on this question, would the eye care practitioner's image affect his level of trustworthiness? My survey consumers replied me more than half saying yes. And that means, right, everybody, what they see immediately translates to what they feel about what you can offer, if that makes sense. So in terms of image, right, when someone comes into your practice, what's the one thing that they will actually notice in that first few minutes? It's actually the first impression, right? The first thing that the first view, the first interaction, or the first vibe that a consumer gets when they come into your practice is called the first impressions. Now, based on my survey, we saw that 80% of the consumers said that they decided on a purchase, or they decided to venture even more in a practice based on the first impressions that they see. And that's really kind of something to think about, right? Because there's a saying that you don't get a second chance to build a good first impression. So if people are deciding to explore further in your practice simply by the first few minutes that they see you, don't you think that this is a good, it is something very important for you to also focus on? Yeah. Now, on that note of first impression, what's actually being observed? I want to also take this opportunity to alter the perception of what people think about image. Because when I tell people that I do image, a lot of times the perception of what people think of is that, oh, is it just the looks? Is it just appearance? But in actual sense, right, image is actually consists of three things, which is the A, B, and C. And these three things are what people see when they interact with you for the first time. A is actually appearance, how you look. When someone walks into your practice, how do you look? Do you look like someone who is able to provide them professional advice? How does your practice look? Does the practice look like somewhere that's very professional, professionally done? Does it look like not a retail front, not a retail store, but rather more of a private practice? Then B is behavior. When someone walks into your store, How do you greet them? Do you show a level of enthusiasm? I've gotten many of my consumers when they were doing this survey telling me that when they walked into the store, example, they did get people telling them, "Hi, welcome to XYZ store," but many of these eye care practitioners didn't even look, stop their work and look up and greeted the consumers with good eye contact. So that really talks about behavior. And the third thing is actually C, communication. When you're greeting someone or when you're using that short few minutes to get people to be interested and entice them to explore more in your practice, how are you saying it? What are some of the words? Are you being too pushy? Or the level or the way that you're communicating, does it sound professional? All these are actually part of what professional image is all about. So it's really not just looks. Of course, looks is really the first few seconds. It's just like when you walk in the mall or you're walking in somewhere, and when you look at someone who you've never met before, the first thing that you actually analyze or assess that person is through their image. So that's the first few seconds. But in terms of a first impression in the retail practice, these are the three aspects that that you are actually being evaluated by the consumer from. Now, what happens after the first impression is done? What about the rest of the consumer experience? So let me share with you some of the findings through this survey. So we asked all these consumers, does the first impression affect how you perceive the entire consultation? Meaning to say from the eye refraction, choosing of the eyewear, and so forth. From here, we saw that 57% of our consumers said yes. Meaning to say, in the first few minutes when they come into your practice and they don't really like what they see, chances of them having a great impression or being thoroughly impressed of what you do is very low. So first impression, right, really sets a strong precedence as to how effective your entire consultation can be. Now, what about in the eye refraction itself? Based on this chart that you can see here, we noted that quite a substantial amount of people said that it's exceptional. The eye refraction was exceptional, but 40%, as you can see in the chart here, says that it's acceptable, but I'm not sure what the procedures are done. Now that speaks about one aspect of image, which is communication. So when you're in the entire eye refraction journey, it's really important to maintain constant communication with your patients or your consumers. And even though you feel that it's something that it's just a few minutes of eye refraction, I don't have time to share with them, having that communication of telling the consumers what you're doing, and how this test will actually help to assess a particular problem of the eye. All of these things are important because as you communicate to the patient, it also shows a level of professionalism and it shows a level of knowledge that you have. So to the consumer, it sounds like you really know what you're doing. So that is something that I've also noted from this survey. And the last part is, what would you say is the biggest factor for you to have a buy-in to the recommendations given by the eye care practitioners? And here we see that 67% of the consumers say that they will have a strong buy-in if they feel comfortable and confident throughout the entire consultation. So how does confidence and comfort, or rather chemistry, how is chemistry being built by the eye care professionals and the clients? Of course, it's through lots of constant communication, and most importantly, it has to do with also the consumer liking you. So image, or first impression for that matter, has a lot to do with likability. If someone, there's always a saying, people like people who are like themselves. So I know it's a mouthful saying that, but basically what it means is that when someone likes you, whether it's the vibe, the first time that they see you, the next communication or the next activities or what to do becomes a lot easier because the chemistry or the likability has already been established. So the conclusion that I can share with everyone through what I shared in this survey is that really at this day and age, perception really is king. That also means that it is important to have substance, no doubt. It is important to have a high level of knowledge of what you do so that you're able to serve your customers well and good. However, in this age and in this world right now, unfortunately, people judge a book by its cover. And that's how our human brain operates. So having the perception, the image of yourself and your practice to be in congruency with what you have to offer is so important, because you don't want to miss out that chance. When you have a great first impression, guys, it really helps you to win half of the battle. As you can see with the survey results that I shared in few slides before, consumers in fact said that they had a higher buy-in, or they felt more convinced just based on the first impression that they had of the eye care practitioner. So that's really something that you need to be mindful and pay attention to as well. So in that sense, where do you start, right? What do you do right now? I'm sure at this moment, many of you, your practices aren't open. So I think this is really a good time for you to have some time to really think through and prepare yourselves, so that when this whole pandemic slows down, when the curve is flattened, and when things go back to normal, you would start your practice really headstrong. Yeah. So what I would suggest for you guys to do, first things first, is to have a look at your current practice or outlet and evaluate it in terms of the ABCs of branding. First things first, are you guys having the right image, the right appearance, the right behavior when your staffs greet your consumers or your clients? And also communication. How are you speaking to your clients? And not just that, I also urge you guys to also look at the consistency of branding across all associates. Now, for some of you who are maybe retail or practice owners, you might be doing a good job because you own the practice. But what about your staffs? Is the level of customer service or the level of professionalism shown to the consumers the same or consistent with what you are able to offer? So have some thought and think about that as well. And I would say start implementing one new thing a week to improve the practice, to improve and practice professional branding. Maybe example, you want to right now start implementing a consistent welcome message. You know, something as simple as "Hi, welcome to XYZ store" can be said in so many different ways from in the same outlet for different associates. So having even the simple welcoming message to be consistent and similar is so important when it comes to professional branding. You might think it's something that is very simple or something that is very negligible, but trust me, it is something that is very important. If not, a lot of big brands out there, a lot of retail stores, like fashion retail stores, would not have implemented that. Because if you can recall, I know many of us have been stuck at home for many days, many weeks. But if you can remember, example, going into a Zara, going into a H&M or a Sephora, you notice that every single store that you go into, the messaging is always the same. Why? Because that is part of their professional branding. So have that in your mind when you are thinking of how you want to change that. Now, how can I help in this sense? So what I can offer is that for practice owners, I can help you to understand your gaps at what really needs to be improved, and how you can effectively build solid SOPs to improve your professional branding. So as you can see, the survey that I was sharing with the 112 consumers, that was actually part of an extensive market research that I did for a particular retail brand in Malaysia. And that particular market research helped me to understand where were their gaps and how to actually implement proper professional branding SOPs so that their associates, their staffs in the outlets can easily implement. And second, for individual practitioners, of course, I can help you to create a systematic framework to rebrand yourself right, to match your substance with perception. Now, being in, if you allow me to be a bit candid, being in the optical industry for close to 10 years now, I've always been in the supplier side, and I've always had an opportunity to participate in conferences, conventions that are related to the optical industry. And I must tell you that many really brilliant people that I've met, with not just in Malaysia, but in many countries, especially when it is an ASEAN or a international convention, many of them do not really, the image, the perception that I see really does not match the designation that they hold. And that's, to me, right, is such a big pity, because um, you you don't really have much opportunity to sometimes verbalize what you are, who you are, and what are your credentials. Many of the times people perceive you just by how you look or how you behave visually. And um, for some of you who feel that that's really not so important, having substance is enough, I hope that, just by in this 20 minutes of me sharing just now on my surveys and whatnot, at least it gives you a little bit, it helps to change your mind a little bit on this, because guys, remember, people definitely judge a book by its cover. And I really sincerely hope that you give some thought into matching your outward image perception to your inner substance and credentials, really. So I leave you with this, which I really strongly believe in. How you present yourself is how people first view you. So what are you showcasing? What is the perception that you're giving people? So with that, guys, I just want to thank you everyone for your attention, and let's connect, whether you're more comfortable with LinkedIn or Facebook, and I'll be really happy to have more conversations with everyone. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for your very insightful thoughts. I mean, there are students, final year students, there are, fresh graduates attending the talk, and I think it's more beneficial not only for them, but everybody who is who is an optometrist, whether you are an experience for 10 years or 20 years. But these are the things what you need to be really careful and really put into your practice so that you build
Right.
up your image. So doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's going for only certain category of people. So it's a very
Yeah.
exciting things what you have put forward. So
Just want to also share one thing as well, because right now that I've been doing this image and branding for the healthcare industry for 3 years, right? I've also noted that actually, guys, I just want to say that the other people in the healthcare industry have started taking this very seriously. In Malaysia, particularly the pharmacy, the professional retail pharmacies, they have been really getting their pharmacies to do lots of like professional image classes. In fact, their association have been like really pushing on these kind of activities and these kind of programs, because they do see that there is value in having the great professional presence. In fact, right now, in even with the nurses association, dentists. So I really, because optometry is really my first love, right? Like I started in this industry, and I really, really just want everyone here to um, think about this, and really, really just remember that it is important how people see you. Yeah.
yeah, that's very right.
Mm.
And I mean, if you put yourself as a consumer, you would better understand that how you would like to be treated when you walk into any
Yes.
practice for that matter. So that gives a bit of thought. Oh, if somebody talked to me like that, I would be more interested, and
Yes.
the other way. So you put
Yeah.
yourself in the consumer's shoe, and then you understand.
Yeah.
There are a
Consumers have
few.
so much choices. Consumers have so many options out there.
Yes, yeah, true.
Yeah.
There are a few questions. Let me just read
Okay.
them out for you.
Okay.
Is it okay sharing some samples where you have a brief framework working on your communication skills?
Sorry, coming in. Any sample?
Yeah, so sharing some samples where you have a brief framework about working on communication skills. So I think this is more towards how to improve your communication skills. Is there any tips
Ah.
on that?
Oh, yes, yes, definitely. I think most importantly, right, is that no matter whether it is communication, behavior, or image, right, you first need to understand your end goal, right? So, how do you want people to view you? And I'm not going to be someone that dictates like, oh, you as an eye care professional, you need people to view you as someone who is professional. You need to be approachable. No, it really is depending on you yourself. How do you want people to see you? And from there, only start working your way into how you want to angle your communication skills. I always say that when it comes to professional retail setting, how you communicate to the clients has to be very clear and concise. That means, remember, yeah, everyone here, we are in the eye care industry. We know what aberration is. We know myopia. It's a very normal word, but it is not normal to people who are not in the industry. So if I can just give you one important tip there is that really keep your communication very layman, non-jargon. And how I shared with the other optical brands last year when I was doing this for them is that how you explain something, right? If you want to make sure that you're explaining it right and clear and concise, just do it with someone, maybe your friends or family that are not from this industry. See if they understand what you're saying. If they do, then you're in the right path. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Layman term language
Yeah,
communication is the most important and the key.
correct.
Right. There's another question. Apart from the ABC rule, what you just mentioned, not the rule,
Mm.
but the ABC, can you share insights on the appearance of the optical outlet itself? Does
Oh,
it play an
okay.
important role, or yeah?
I think the insights, what I get from optical practices itself is that it really depends on location. So my consumers, my 112 consumers did share with me, the ones that rated higher in terms of the optical outlet rated it because it was the locations were accessible. It was not hard to find it. Parking was great. And as well as when you walk into the practice, right, it seemed like there was a good space for people to walk around, so it was not so congested. So these are like some of the things that we also evaluated the outlets in. And I would say among all, in terms of the practice itself, the one that everyone kind of like gave me the most feedbacks was really about location and accessibility.
Yeah, correct. And
Mm-hmm.
there's one question from a fresh graduate. He
Mm-hmm.
says that he has observed customers judge a person or a practitioner experience by the age. So, how
Mm.
do we overcome this problem?
Well, I think I can really relate to this particular question because doing what I do right now, I think I would say the biggest non-compliment I can get is when people tell me that I look very young. You know what I mean? So, so I think when it comes to age, right, it is very important to understand that the first impression that you showcase cannot be seen as you're a fresh grad. Trust me, right? If you now look through people who are not in the optical industry, when you go into a shop for that matter in the future, it's very obvious. You can tell someone is young, right, just by how they dress, how they, in fact, as much as like how they style themselves, what kind of attire they wear, the entire body language, all of that, right, can immediately tell this person is young, fresh in this industry, young, and is maybe young in age as well. So I would say learning how to dress well and learning how to behave professionally and maturely, right, will help you with the age thing. Because I know it's not just age. I think some people, I'm sure you might be 40, but you look like you're 30, right? You have very baby face, right? So these kind of things really would make a difference.
Okay.
Mm.
And what's your take on the online marketing which affects the optical practices? But because when it comes to online, there is no image branding kind of a thing because you are not present all the time. So, is there any things you would like to
Okay.
suggest?
I think first things first is that I feel that we need to also understand the consumer's behavior, right? What has enticed the consumer to decide to buy something online? It's because they view the particular practice or the product as a fast moving consumer good, right? They think that this is something where every outlet has it. Right now, the difference that I see as a consumer is the price is different, and online seems to be cheaper. Therefore, I would go online. So I think that comes back to also the branding or the professional image that you need to also portray to differentiate yourself, to show consumers, right, that it is important, to show consumers that, you know, there is a differentiation between what you can offer versus what online is. It's not just a price conversation. It is also very much to do with the level of services that you can offer. Because being in the supplier side, I mean, this has been a constant debate and a constant conversation that we have always had. Why is it people are buying these products online? You know, it is of course affecting the livelihood of the bricks and mortar people who have physical stores, right? And it's really to do with this. It is about the pricing difference. If consumers cannot see that you have more things to offer, then they will always judge you by the pricing. Yeah. So the best way for, yeah.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to communication. If you have let the patients or your consumers know that what is the importance, as you mentioned about the eye exam, for example. So if they know that, you know, what are you doing, and they are quite aware of what's happening, even if you charge them $10 more, they would be confident in you rather than going online. So building up that first trust is really very important.
Exactly. Yeah. And the sad truth is, I think many, when I was in the supplier side, I had an opportunity to also visit optical stores in other countries as well. And I would say that it is very similar in a sense where a lot of eye care practitioners really value the level of expertise or the level of knowledge they have of products and services and you know, the latest technology, but they failed to realize that, you know, if you have no choice, you have no chance to communicate all of this to the consumer, it is useless. But what gives you the chance to communicate to the consumer is if the consumer likes you and believes that the level of professionalism that you have is high. How? Simply by the consumer buying into your professional image. That's why.
That's right. There's one question on starting up the practice. So I'm not sure whether it's directly related to our talk today or not, but let me just ask your views on it. Can we start our optical immediately after graduation? Do you think we need to?
Personally, I don't quite. I mean, like, if someone were to ask me this on a personal opinion, I would say no. In fact, right, I would always tell people that the optical industry is not just about practice. It is about so many aspects of elements to it. There is the retail practice. There's the suppliers. You know, there's so many parts of it, and I think if you really want to, if you're thinking of opening your own practice, it is very important to explore all of these things so that you have knowledge and experience, and that helps you to minimize your risk of failing. That's what I think. I mean, of course, I have seen some of my counterparts, my friends as well, who have had their practices immediately when they graduated, and they've been doing well. But that's also not without any kind of struggles. So I'm just saying that, you know, a few years working for a good eye care practitioner really helps you in your future when you want to open your own practice.
Yeah. Okay. One last question. Why do you choose over an optometrist wearing a white apron or someone with a pleasing formal wear in an optical outlet?
Oh,
What's your
would
take
I
on it?
choose whether it's a white, whether it is a
Yes.
white lab coat, I guess, or a
Yeah.
blazer?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say this from again, this is an opinion based from an image consultant's perspective. I understand that when you wear a white lab coat, immediately people know or can identify that you're someone very related to the health side, right? Health industry. And that is why a lot of optical stores implement that. However, then there is also no differentiating point from you towards that. In fact, now, even if you look at some beauty stores, their sales assistants also wear a lab coat. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that you want to create that particular image where you look different in a very professional view. I'm not saying that if right now you're wearing lab coat in your practice, you should not do it. But if you're asking me lab coat versus like a very smart and a very presentable formal attire, which is something that in a consumer's perspective looks more professional, obviously it's the blazer lah. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I missed out one question. If you don't mind, I'll just ask
Yeah.
that quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
The ABC formula, how can you say that that formula can be followed in rural areas?
In rural areas?
Yeah.
Oh, I think, and it is irregardless of the location, whether you're in rural or in urban, actually, because when I say that appearance is important, I'm not asking everyone here to, okay, once the movement restriction order is done, everyone please go and buy something expensive and wear it. No. I think as long as you are neat, you are presentable, that speaks a lot already. I think irregardless of your surrounding, whether it's rural, whether it's urban or not, it is just a representation of you, right? Like how do you want people to see you? That's really important. Yeah. And of course, behavior and communication, these are things that, of course, irregardless of where you are, you can still effectively practice all of these things with, of course, proper understanding how to do so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Ranukka, for your very insightful thoughts. We would
Most
we
welcome.
really appreciate your time and sharing with us, all the tips and all the answering for all the questions. Thank you. Okay, so before we leave for today, let me just share my screen and let them know, let you all know what's there tomorrow. So tomorrow, for tomorrow's session, uh, yeah. So tomorrow we have Optom Sakina Musaji. She is going to talk to us about the approach to the pediatric eye examination. So tune in tomorrow. The timings are mentioned. It's 10 a.m. India time and 12:30 p.m. Malaysia time. So until then, stay safe, stay home, and see you all again tomorrow. Bye.